1879, the final year of a decade that has seen the British Empire expand its foothold in southern Africa. Most recently was the annexation of Natal, bringing British rule to the southern banks of what they called the Buffalo River. Just across the river lay Zululand, a small but powerful kingdom ruled by King Cetshwayo, who had spent the decade rebuilding the nation into a powerful force. But while appearing aggressive, Cetshwayo only really wanted peace between his people and the British. This was seemingly accomplished when a border dispute between the Zulus and the Boers inhabiting Natal was settled in Cetshwayo's favor. But several incidents throughout the summer of 1878 would undermine this decision, most notably the capture and execution of two wives of a Zulu chief that had fled into Natal. These incidents provided High Commissioner Henry Bardo Freire with the sparks he had been searching for to begin a war with the Zulus. Freire wanted to annex Zululand to increase British control in South Africa. Without approval from London, he issued an ultimatum to Cetshwayo with demands that could never be realistically made. The ultimatum allowed Freire to send British forces to the border. These troops, under the command of Lieutenant General Frederick Augustus Chelmsford, had been sent to South Africa to defend Natal. Now they were given new orders to invade Zululand. Chelmsford had originally wished for a five-pronged invasion, but with only 7,000 regulars to pull from, would instead consolidate his forces into three columns. The 9 battalions were outfitted with the latest firearms, the Martini Henry rifle. At 12 rounds per minute, Chelmsford hoped these breech-loading guns would easily take down the Zulus, who were only armed with spears and cowhide shields. 7,000 additional native warriors filled out Chelmsford ranks. These became known as the Natal Native Contingent, with really only red sashes to designate themselves from their adversaries. Some were even disaffected Zulus, as a rift was growing over Cetshwayo's controversial rule. The three columns made ready along the Zululand borders around January 9th, with Chelmsford personally overseeing the center column, which crossed the Buffalo River via RORKE'S Drift on January the 11th, the target being the Zulu capital of Luandi. Beginning the 17th of January, Zulu MPs were on the move. The largest was commanded by Ncingwa Kamahale, with very particular orders. Ncingwayo was to take the route of easy passage, to only strike in day, and to remain concealed until the right moment to ambush Chelmsford's column. A victory under these circumstances would allow Cetshwayo to have leverage in future peace negotiations. By January 20th, Chelmsford had only made 10 miles. Here, he would encamp his force at a seemingly fine defensive position at the base of an isolated hill called Isandlwana. It was common to arrange wagons into what was called a larger, essentially a makeshift redoubt. Chelmsford, however, did not do this. He was overly confident that any such attack could be easily repelled, that a small force was just too technologically advanced. This age-old myth, however, would have dire consequences. Chelmsford's scouts would begin reporting the presence of Zulu scouts several miles south of Isandlwana. A classic Zulu tactic was to feint movements to draw the enemy out into the open. Chelmsford knew this. However, he believed that the scouts were signaling the presence of the main Zulu impi. In the early morning of January 22nd, Chelmsford advanced out of camp, leaving behind about 6 companies of the 24th Regiment, along with several NNC companies and 2 7-pound mountain howitzers. Taking charge would be Henry Pullein, who had a long career of clerical services prior to this day. Pullein would eventually be joined by Colonel Anthony Durnford, with his loyal native light horses that numbered around 500. A dispute arose over who would take command of the camp, as Durnford outranked Pullein, but pressing matters were at foot. Throughout the morning, reports came in of Zulu scouts upon Niani Ridge, north of camp. Durnford advanced east, leaving his unit of rockets and an NNC company in the dust. Durnford's haste was characteristic of his headstrong nature, which nearly had him removed from power prior to the war. Pullein also sent A Company and elements of the NNC to screen the ridge. The few Zulus spotted quickly retreated, and their retreat enticed some of the Zikali horses who gave chase. Around noon, Lieutenant Charles Rohr of the 1st Zikali crested the ridge, and below him was not a small screening party, but instead the entire impi commanded by Ncingwayo. Ncingwayo had given Chelmsford the slip and then encamped about 8 miles north of Isandlwana. The plan was to wait till the next day to attack, as the new moon was a bad omen. But upon seeing Rowe, order briefly broke down. Like stomping on a hornet's nest, the Zulus rushed toward the light horses, who quickly fled. Pulaine received word of the Zulus' movement at 12:15, just a half hour after receiving orders from Chelmsford to pack up the camp and rejoin his column. Pulaine chose to make a stand and placed his 6 companies in a line extending east from Isandlwana. The NNC troops, Barry, Crone, Stafford, and Lonesdale, were kept behind due to a lack of firearms and were expected to chase after the Zulu once they broke from the superior firepower. The volunteer and police units of Bradstreet advanced a mile out of camp in a donga to cover Durnford's retreat. Gunfire could be heard in the east, but the view of the fight between the Zulu and Durnford was obscured by the large conical hill in the center of the battlefield. At around 1 p.m., the first sight of the Zulu army appeared. The 25,000 Zulus had formed into 4 units. Zulu warfare was based on the horns of the buffalo. The center, or chest corps, would test the strength of the enemy before the left and right horns, or corps, would swing around and destroy the enemy's flank. A 4th Reserve Corps, the Undi Corps, was sweeping west, prepared to catch any fugitives that fled the field. The first attacks on the camp were driven from the north, using the dongas for protection. The British kept them from making much progress, but the Zulu discovered that the British line were not using volley fire, but firing at will, weakening their advantage in firearms. Durnford's small 400 force was spotted being pursued by the massive left horn numbering some 9,000 Zulus. The light horses dismounted and took up positions within a donga that would soon bear the name of Durnford. This new position held back the left horn for some time, forcing the Zulu to move further south and stretch their formations. But the Zulu regiments were growing too much to withstand, and the British right flank pulled back to camp. As Durnford retreated, the left horn burst into a charge. The outlying British detachments became caught in a crashing wave. The sudden advance surely rattled Pulaine, who began to order his line to retreat back to camp. Within the rows of tents were Zulus of the right horn, who had swept around the back of Isandlwana to cut off the British retreat. Cohesion in the British ranks evaporated, being surrounded on all sides. Now in close quarters, the Zulu could use their Ikwala spears to perfection. Soldiers were stabbed, then disemboweled, a Zulu's spiritual act to release the soul, so it may not hunt the killer. British and Natal alike became shoulder to shoulder in desperate last stands. Some managed to slip through chaos and make a break for the Buffalo River, with Zulu chasing them down. A few took to shelter within the rocks of Isandlwana, holding out till they ran out of ammunition and being taken down in a hail of spears. By 2:30, the sky grew dark over the battlefield, a partial solar eclipse, which poetically marked the last few moments for many still holding out. By 3 o'clock, the last of the gunfire petered out. When Chelmsford's column returned to Isandlwana, they arrived to find a scene of horror. Bodies of their fellow soldiers were scattered about, some stripped, others mutilated. Pulaine and Durnford were both found dead among the piles of corpses. Zulu corpses laid scattered about in the destroyed camp. The colors of the 24th Regiment were to be found days later in the Buffalo River. Nichenguayo had achieved a stunning Zulu victory. Some 1,000 British soldiers and their Natal allies lay dead. History's greatest defeat to a technologically inferior power. When news eventually reached London, the defeat stunned everyone. But the decisive victory came at a price. Not only were nearly 2,000 Zulus dead, but Nichenguayo realized something was missing, that being the entire Undi Corps left in reserve. Commanded by the half-brother of the king, the Undi Corps pursued British fugitives from the fight into Natal, to a small mission station called RORKE'S. Oh, you're still here. Well, if you stayed till the end, this video must have really enjoyed it. And that's the case, be sure to hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to Readout Productions. I cover military history as well. I hope to cover industrial history and just random history of the area I live in, Western Pennsylvania. See you then.